Even as the United States imposes sanctions after sanctions against Russia and North Korea, the leaders of these two countries met this week and signed a security deal. Russian President Vladimir Putin just concluded his visit to Pyongyang, a first in 24 years, and it culminated with a landmark pact for what they call immediate military assistance if either faces armed aggression. Here's what this means. Putin and Kim Jong talked about cooperation on military support and unspecified technological assistance. In case any one of the two sides is put in a state of war by an armed invasion from another country or several countries, the other side will provide military and other assistance within its means without delay. The provision of technological assistance is also crucial. Currently, remember, North Korea is believed to possess nuclear weapons but lacks critical missile guidance systems, cutting-edge warhead design and re-entry vehicle technology. So Russian tech aid would certainly give a big boost to the North. The coming together of Putin and Jinping is a big challenge to their neighbors as well as the United States. For South Korea and Japan, this treaty is perceived as a direct security threat. The United States, meanwhile, has time and again reaffirmed its commitment to its allies. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg, too, has expressed deep concern about this pact, highlighting the risks to global security and the potential for increased nuclear proliferation. So what does the strengthening of the Russia-North Korea ties mean for the world? And after North, why did Vladimir Putin make an outreach to Asia by visiting Vietnam? Let's try and understand what this means for the two countries and the entire world and how this changes the geopolitics of the world. On the broadcast, I'm joined by Ambassador Trigunayat and also Dr. Swasti Rao, geopolitical analyst at MP-IDSA. Good evening and namaskar to both of you. Ambassador Trigunayat, let me start with you first. How concerning is this for the rest of the world, for these two leaders to come together after 24 years? Vladimir Putin has made this visit. Is it concerning? Is it crucial as a move to counter the West and its allies?
You see, in my view, the world is moving towards a Cold War 2.0 kind of a scenario. And the Russia-Ukraine war's outcome will really decide which way the world is going to go. Currently, we are through a transition. And what is Russia trying to do? Russia is basically trying to build its ties with a global majority, China, India, in that sense. The global South, you know that they are going to Africa and everywhere else. And of course, the global East, in which all these countries are concerned. Now, as far as North Korea is concerned in the first place, we must understand that they have Putin, when he became the president, visited North Korea first when president's father was Kim Jong was the one leading at the time. And since then, after 24 years, he's gone now. But that doesn't matter because last year we had the Kim Jong-un visiting Russia, and there were a lot of deals were signed at the time. And this time what they have done is they have formalized it and upgraded the agreements that were signed in 1961, 2000, and all that, different agreements, taking it to a defense pact. Now, this defense pact clearly stresses what is already a practical cooperation between the two countries. It is not something very new. We know that for quite some time now, the North Koreans have been providing the shells and others, the weapons, artillery, missiles to Russia in exchange essentially for food, fuel, and modern technology. Now, this has been formalized now. So this is something that is important in the sense, but we have to see that there has been close cooperation between these two countries for quite some time, from the Soviet times, so to say. Of course, China is a major factor there because China is a country which has very close relationship with Pyongyang, which has, of course, in the last few years, we have gone through a bit of a turbulence. Now, going next to, so of course, the worry is there because challenges are very similar. For both North Korea and Russia, the current challenge is from the US and the West. And there it is Japan, South Korea, and USA are trying to work together against China and against Pyongyang, essentially. And Pyongyang remains to be a major frontal state, which is in between there. And that's why it is very important. It's unpredictable state. And nobody knows exactly what kind of a potential it has and how much sanity will come in their discourse and the responses that they will create. So it's very important to understand in this particular country, which we are seeing now. So today, you are seeing Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea virtually coming together in that sense. President Putin was in
Hmm.
China before. As soon as he was re-elected, after that, his first visit was to
Yeah.
China, and the second happens to be North Korea, and now he went to
Yeah, but
Vietnam. Now,
Ambassador
Vietnam also,
Trigunayat,
you
and
must
let me take
understand,
this across to Dr.
all
Swasti. Interestingly, in this entire visit, Ambassador Trigunayat and Dr. Swasti, the reaction from China so far has been silence, and that's interesting because, as Ambassador Trigunayat mentioned, China has been close to Pyongyang. China would want its control over North to continue in terms of how it's been mediating between North Korea and the world, and how it sees North Korea as a country that it has dominance over. But now, of course, with Russia stepping in and closer ties with Russia, clearly China has a lot to worry about too.
Absolutely, Shreya. Good evening to you and good evening to Ambassador Trigunayat. I agree with this analysis, which is that, yes, on the one hand, I think Ambassador Trigunayat has given a good overview of where this relationship is coming from. It is nothing new, but what the Ukraine war has done is that it's kind of, pushed them together, number one. With respect to China, yes, if you carefully notice what has China to say about the security pact, for example, which is signed between North Korea and Russia, in my opinion, the security pact is only making obvious a dynamic which was in place at least since late 2022. It's just now sort of bringing it out in the open. It is already there. There's a lot of geolocated footage and other evidences from different sources that confirm that actually North Korea has been sending 152 shells, the 122 howitzers, which is, the mortar shells, etc., and ballistic missiles to Russia for, like I said, at least since the end of September 2022. Now, with respect to China, now this is an interesting dynamic, Shreya, because you mentioned that China has been historically a very important ally for North Korea, but at the same time, China would want a kind of a stability in the Korean Peninsula. And with what is happening right now, with these overt claims that Russia has made, that if you look at the security pact, it has made that claim that in case of an armed attack, the other side is going to come, or to its security and collective defense, that kind of a thing. It really does. And also that's one part. The other part is about what is the quid pro quo between North Korea and Russia for this, this trade of artillery shells and ballistic missiles and the 122 shells, which is running in thousands, thousands, hundreds of thousands. We are not talking about a couple of dozens of the, consignments, but hundreds of thousands of shells and hundreds and thousands of consignments. So on the one hand, of course, this is destabilizing for the Korean Peninsula, and that is why China has been very silent on it. Number two, what it also does, and what we are not talking about too much, is that in response to what North Korea and Russia have done with respect to the security pact, you see now South Korea is now planning to lift its ban on supplying lethal aid to Ukraine. And you know what that means. South Korea has millions of artillery shells lying in its stockpiles. So what we are getting into is an unprecedented escalation of the war in Ukraine. On the one hand, that is why I've been saying for a while that the war in Ukraine is far from over. Going by the military preparedness and all these changing dynamics, now the war is going to go on at least until the end of 2026, number one. Number two, you also see an unprecedented merging of the two security theaters because, in Russia and because of its action in East Europe, you see the kind of a fallout that you have in East Asia now. So this is also about the merging of two security theaters, which is going to, I think, open a wide array of both opportunities and costs. But for now, I think
Dr.
the situation is
Swasti, that's exactly the messaging that perhaps Vladimir Putin wanted to send across. Ambassador Trigunayat, I mean, look at the visuals that came out of North Korea. Putin and Kim Jong-un in that car with Putin driving. Then when he was leaving from the aircraft, he was waving goodbye. That was a really long goodbye to Kim Jong-un that Putin made. All of those visuals coming in, of course, apart from the sign, clearly a lot of symbolism also in place there to show to the world, the Western world, Japan and South Korea to send a strong message that, whatever you're doing there with our Russian soldiers on the battlefield is, we can equate that with you through North Korea?
Well, that is all symbolism and messaging is there. Apart from that, one fact I would like to tell you is that when you consider that North Korea is a backyard of China, I must also tell you that China and Russia both coordinate their policies very closely. And so President Putin was there before, and I'm sure his visit to North Korea and Vietnam were discussed during that also. So that is something that we need to understand, that this is a collaborative partnership in that sense. As far as the messaging is concerned, it's very clear. President Putin also wanted to say, though, that he's under the ICC arrest warrant and the Western countries are trying to isolate. So he's trying to prove by visiting these two countries and wherever. I mean, he's the chair of the BRICS this year, and he'll have large number of countries coming there. And just now, Malaysia and Thailand have said that they will like to join BRICS. So you have 30 odd countries more lined up for joining the BRICS. So he's just wanting to tell that your isolation has not worked. His policy has moved more towards the east and towards the south, and where he's been quite successfully wading through despite, and he's trying to expose the Western designs in Ukraine. So all this is getting very murkier by the day, I must say. And that's why I said that whatever happens tomorrow with the result of the Russia-Ukraine war, and if it doesn't end soon, we will be going into a very, very difficult terrain.
Dr. Swasti Rao, let me quickly ask you then and understand from you, in fact, after this visit, Putin went to Vietnam as well. There's clearly an outreach to Asia. In terms of the Asian dynamic with Russia, we know that we have carefully traded this path since the war began. But where do you see India in the Asian world really, heading towards and balancing it out through this war now?
Well, I think from the perspective of India, India has maintained a neutral position from the beginning. While on the one hand, India has been consistently part of all collaborative efforts at building peace in Ukraine, starting from Copenhagen to Jeddah to Malta to Switzerland, even though we did not sign the joint communique. But I think Indian participation has been very much a done deal, number one. India has also been sending, consignments of humanitarian aid. We have already sent about 15 consignments of humanitarian aid to Ukraine. The channels of communication remain open. So I think that's one part, that India stands on the path of peace. It's an oft-repeated theme. And the other thing is that India has also made it clear to the West that it has historical and abiding ties with Russia. Now, that's one part. With respect to the war particularly, and you mentioned the visit to Vietnam, I think it is Putin's visit to Vietnam which really shows actually the kind of traction that he's trying to build in the global South, and also somewhere give a reply, a befitting reply to the West, because you see, by all means, North Korea is a pariah state. North Korea, and going to North Korea or winning the diplomatic affections and all these things from North Korea isn't really a kind of a win in a real sense of the term, because North Korea is one of the most isolated states in the world. And number two, I mean, like I said, that things are not clear about what is the quid pro quo, what is the terms and conditions of the quid pro quo. But when it comes to Vietnam, Shreya, this is definitely something which requires underscoring, because Vietnam has been a very important part of the Southeast Asian world, and India, for example, has excellent defense relations, and Vietnam is where actually we sent the BrahMos missiles. And Vietnam is not just that, even for the West. By the way, I think it should be known that all the most of the investments that are not going to China anymore under the very conscious China +1 diversification are actually ending up in Vietnam. So Putin going and trying to sort of court Vietnam during this time. And when Vietnam is an important player for the West as well, Vietnam has also been trying to balance both sides and play both sides. I think that is something which really, truly deserves attention. Now, what really happens
so interesting dynamics really playing out, Dr. Swasti Rao. Yeah, I have paucity of time, Dr. Swasti. I'll have to wrap it up here. We'll leave it there. We'll have to see how this really moves forward. But for the moment, thank you very much to both of you, Ambassador Trigunayat and Dr. Swasti Rao, for joining us on Nation Tonight and sharing your perspective. Thank you very much. All right.